I sold my car and my last pieces of jewelry to salvage my wife's failing salon, believing sacrifice was love. But the night I opened her group chat, one message made my hands shake and told me my marriage had been ending long before the business ever started to fail. My name is Daniel, a husband who chose loyalty over comfort, and she is Melissa, a woman chasing a dream that was slipping through her fingers, mirrors cracking, chairs empty, bills stacking while I quietly bled everything I had to keep her salon alive. I watched her cry over unpaid rent, promise this was the final push, swear the salon would survive if I just held on a little longer. But every buzz of her phone felt heavier than the last, every smile more distant, every late night more unexplained. I thought I was fighting for her future, but what if the salon was never meant to be saved? What if the sacrifice I called love was the very thing being used against me? And what could possibly be hidden inside a group chat that would change my life forever and force me to question whether my wife was failing or quietly preparing to disappear? Because once you sell everything for love, there's no undo button. The phone buzzed again on the kitchen counter, vibrating just enough to inch closer to the edge. The sound felt louder in the quiet apartment, as if it were calling my name. Melissa was in the bathroom. The shower ran steady, steam curling beneath the door. She always took longer showers when she was anxious, long enough to think, long enough to rehearse conversations she never quite finished having with me. I picked up the phone, intending only to silence it. For a brief moment, I hesitated, not because I believed looking was wrong, but because a familiar warning rose in my chest, the same warning I'd ignored years ago when my father packed his bags and told my mother he needed space. Back then, I'd learned that some truths don't arrive gently. They force their way in and rearrange everything. The screen lit up. Freedom, girls. The word freedom lodged itself somewhere deep. We didn't talk about freedom anymore. Not since money became a daily argument we avoided by pretending everything was fine. Not since Melissa stopped asking how my day went and started asking how much was left in the account. The phone unlocked instantly. My birthday. That detail should have felt intimate. Instead, it felt practiced, like a door left open because someone expected it might need to be used. The chat opened. Mid-conversation. The first thing I saw wasn't text. It was a screenshot. A bank transfer. My bank transfer. The exact amount from 2 days earlier, when I'd stood in the dealership parking lot, handing over the keys to the car I'd driven for 7 years. The car I used to commute to work, to pick up groceries, to drive Melissa to the salon when her own car started acting up. Above the screenshot, Melissa had written, "Ladies, he really did it." I lowered myself into the chair without realizing it. The wood pressed hard against the back of my legs. Another message appeared. "Girl, you better enjoy it before you bounce." Bounce. My chest tightened. I scrolled. "Once the salon closes, you're free. Men like that think sacrifice equals love. Use the guilt. It works every time." My hands trembled, not violently, just enough that I had to steady the phone against the table. The shower continued running. Melissa hummed softly, a tune she used to hum years ago, back when we lived in a smaller apartment and dreamed together instead of separately. A flashback surfaced without permission. Melissa standing in the empty salon on opening day, sunlight flooding the mirrors, her eyes shining as she whispered, "This is ours." Daniel. Another memory followed her, insisting the lease be in her name alone. "I want this to be mine," she'd said, smiling. "You already do so much." I'd believed her. I scrolled again. Then I saw it. "By the time he figures it out, I'll be gone. New city, new life. No more broke husband." The room seemed to shrink. Suddenly, details I'd brushed aside connected: her refusal to let me see the books, her new clothes despite unpaid bills, the way she angled her phone away when she typed. The salon wasn't collapsing. It was counting down. I sat there, listening to the water run, realizing that while I thought I was salvaging her dream, I had been funding my own erasure. I put the phone back exactly where I found it, screen down, as if placement alone could rewind time. My hands felt numb, but my mind was moving too fast, connecting moments I had once filed away as harmless. The bathroom door opened, and Melissa stepped out wrapped in a towel, steam clinging to her skin. She looked lighter somehow, relaxed, like someone who had already set something down. "You okay?" she asked casually, drying her hair. Her voice carried the same tone she used when she already knew the answer. "Yeah," I said, surprised at how steady it sounded. "Just tired," she nodded, accepting that too easily, then glanced at the counter. Her eyes flicked quickly to where her phone lay. It was a small movement, almost nothing. Months ago, I wouldn't have noticed it. Now it felt deliberate. Melissa hadn't always been like this. When I met her, she was working two jobs, one at a diner, one apprenticing at a salon owned by a woman who barely paid her. She'd come home exhausted, hands smelling of hair products and fries, collapsing beside me on the couch with a tired laugh. Back then, her dreams were raw and honest. She talked about owning a salon like someone talks about oxygen, not luxury, just survival. I don't want to be rich, she used to say. I just want something that's mine. I believed her because I wanted to. Because belief felt easier than scrutiny. We weren't wealthy, not then, not now. I worked a steady job in logistics, nothing glamorous but reliable. We lived within our means, saved carefully. The car I sold wasn't new, but it was paid off. The jewelry had been my mother's modest pieces, sentimental more than valuable. Together, they represented security, not abundance, but stability. Melissa walked past me into the bedroom. I'm heading out early tomorrow, she said lightly. Supplier meeting. That word supplier had started to appear more often than the suppliers themselves. You want me to come by the salon later? I asked. Help clean up. She hesitated for half a second. Just half, then smiled. No, babe, I've got it handled. Handled. That same word echoed in my head from months earlier, when I'd offered to look at the salon's finances. She'd laughed, then kissed my cheek. You already do enough. Let me carry this. I watched her move around the room, humming again. Her phone buzzed once more on the counter. She didn't look at it this time, but her shoulders stiffened, almost imperceptibly. Foreshadowing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It lives in the pauses between words, in the things people don't say when they should. Later that night, lying beside her in the dark, I stared at the ceiling while she slept, or pretended to. Her breathing was shallow, controlled. Not the deep sleep she used to fall into when life felt honest. A memory surfaced uninvited. My mother sitting at the kitchen table years ago, staring at my father's empty chair, whispering. He left long before he packed his bags. At the time, I hadn't understood. Now, I did. I turned slightly toward Melissa. Hey, I said softly. She murmured. Whatever happens with the salon, we're okay, right? There was a pause just long enough to matter. Of course, she said finally. Why wouldn't we be? I watched her face in the faint glow of the streetlight, memorizing it, knowing deep down that I was looking at someone already halfway gone. And for the first time, I thought I didn't want to have settled into place. What if the salon wasn't failing because of money, but because Melissa no longer planned to stay? The next morning, I woke before the alarm, my body already tense as if it had been shaken awake by something it couldn't name. Melissa's side of the bed was empty. The sheets were cold, neatly smoothed, the way she did when she wanted to leave no trace of movement behind. From the kitchen came the soft clink of a mug against the counter. She was already dressed for work when I walked in. Black jeans, a cream blouse, hair pulled back with careful precision. It was the kind of outfit she wore when she wanted to look capable, confident, and touchable. You're up early, I said. She smiled without turning around. Big day. I poured myself coffee and watched her reflection in the microwave door. She checked her phone, typed quickly, then slid it into her bag. That motion, quick practice, felt like muscle memory, like something she'd been doing far longer than I realized. Did the supplier confirm? I asked. Yes, she said. Too fast. Everything's set. I nodded, even as a quiet unease settled in. Months earlier, when the salon was new and hope was still loud, she used to talk through every detail with me, names, costs, plans. Now, everything important happened somewhere I wasn't allowed to see. As she reached for her keys, I said, Melissa. She paused. I sold the jewelry because I believed in you, I continued carefully. In us. She turned then, eyes soft, almost hurt. She crossed the room and kissed my cheek. I know. And I'll make it worth it. I promise. That word again. Promise. After she left, the apartment felt hollow, like sound echoed too easily. I sat at the table longer than necessary, replaying her words, her tone. Promises, I'd learned, weren't about truth, they were about timing. I went to work late that day. My job had always been steady, predictable, a quiet anchor in a life that was starting to feel unmoored. As I drove the borrowed car from a coworker, I thought about the first year of our marriage, how Melissa used to wait up for me, how we used to count our savings together, dreaming in small, realistic steps. Somewhere along the way, the dream had grown teeth. That afternoon, curiosity overpowered restraint. I drove past the salon. The sign was still up, but one of the letters flickered. Inside, only one chair was occupied. Melissa stood behind the client, smiling too brightly, phone tucked just out of sight on the counter. When the client laughed, Melissa laughed louder. I stayed in the car, watching. A delivery truck pulled up, not the supplier she'd mentioned. Something smaller, quicker. A man stepped out, handed her a package, spoke briefly. She nodded, signed, and slipped him some cash from her pocket. Cash. Where had that come from? As I pulled away, another memory surfaced, Melissa insisting months earlier that the salon didn't need a joint account. It's cleaner this way, she'd said. Less stress for us. At the time, it sounded responsible. Now, it sounded strategic. That night, she came home late. Again. How'd it go? I asked. Good, she said, avoiding my eyes as she kicked off her shoes. Progress. Progress toward what? She went straight to the shower. Phone in hand this time. I sat alone in the living room, the silence thick. The pieces slowly aligning into a picture I didn't want to see. And for the first time since opening that group chat, I understood something crucial. I wasn't just reacting to betrayal. I was standing at the edge of a decision that would define who I became after it. I didn't sleep that night. Melissa lay beside me, her back turned, the faint glow of her phone lighting up the wall every few minutes. Each vibration felt like a small tap on my chest, a reminder that conversations were happening somewhere I didn't exist. Around 2 a.m., she shifted, then stood quietly, carrying her phone into the bathroom. The door closed. The lock clicked. That sound stayed with me. In the stillness, memories surfaced not all at once, but in fragments, like scenes from a film I'd ignored while it played. Melissa discouraging me from coming by the salon too often. Melissa insisting she handle the landlord calls alone. Melissa saying, with a laugh that hadn't quite reached her eyes, "You don't need to worrying about everything, Daniel." Worrying, I was learning, had never been the problem. By morning, I'd made a choice. Not a loud one, not yet, just a quiet shift in direction. When Melissa left for work, I followed, keeping a careful distance, my heart hammering harder with every turn. I felt ridiculous, like a stranger in my own marriage, but the logic was unavoidable now. If I wanted to understand what was happening, I couldn't rely on what she told me anymore. She didn't go straight to the salon. Instead, she pulled into a cafe across town, the kind with polished wood tables and prices that didn't match our current reality. I parked down the street and watched through the window. She wasn't alone. 2 women sat across from her, both stylish, confident. They leaned in as Melissa spoke, nodding, laughing. One of them slid a phone across the table. Melissa glanced at it, then smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. That smile wasn't stressed. It was relieved. A flashback hit me hard. Melissa introducing me to her friends years earlier. Squeezing my hand under the table, saying proudly, "This is Daniel. He believes in me." Back then, belief had been mutual. Shared. Now, belief seemed like currency. I watched as Melissa pulled out an envelope thick and discreetly handed it to one of the women. The woman peeked inside, nodded, and tucked it into her bag. My chest tightened. Whatever was happening wasn't new. It had rhythm, practice. I drove away before they noticed me, my hands gripping the wheel. Questions raced through my mind, but one rose above the rest. How long had this been going on? That afternoon, I called the landlord. It wasn't an impulsive decision. It was the result of months of unease, finally given permission to speak. "Hi," I said carefully. "This is Daniel Carter. I'm calling about Melang Beauty Studio." There was a pause on the other end. "Oh," the landlord said slowly. "You're Melissa's husband." "Yes." Another pause. Longer this time. "She didn't mention you were involved," he said. "But since you called, I should tell you she gave notice last week, end of the month." The words landed quietly, like snow, soft, final. I thanked him and hung up, my hand numb around the phone. Noticed. The salon hadn't been failing because of debt. It was already being dismantled. That evening, Melissa came home humming again, tossing her keys onto the counter. "We might need to talk soon," she said casually. About next steps, I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not a woman drowning, but one already swimming toward another shore. And for the first time since this began, I felt something other than pain. I felt clarity. I didn't confront her that night. Clarity has a way of quieting emotions instead of inflaming them. Once I knew the salon was already being dismantled, the betrayal stopped feeling chaotic. It felt organized, intentional, and that made anger less useful than patience. Over dinner, Melissa talked about options. She used that word carefully, like it was neutral, harmless. Options for the salon. Options for growth. Options for space. I think we both need room to breathe, she said, twirling pasta she barely ate. This pressure hasn't been good for us. For us, I nodded, letting her words settle. The irony almost made me smile. She spoke as if the pressure had simply appeared like weather rather than being engineered slowly, step by step. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. She looked up. Regret what? Starting the salon. She hesitated, just a fraction too long. No, she said. I regret how hard it's been. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room and opened my laptop. I didn't need passwords. Melissa had never changed them. Trust, when abused, becomes a tool. Emails surfaced first. Conversations with the landlord, with suppliers, with people whose names I didn't recognize. Dates jumped out at me, decisions made weeks before the tears, before the desperate pleas, before I sold anything. Then I found the document. A budget spreadsheet titled Exit Plan. My breath caught. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't messy. It was clean, methodical. Money allocated for moving costs. Short-term housing. Emergency cash. A line item labeled Buffer. Daniel. Buffer. A memory flashed. Melissa crying in the bedroom after I told her I'd sold the jewelry. Pressing her face into my chest, whispering, I don't deserve you. She'd been telling the truth. Just not the way I'd understood it. As I scrolled, I realized something else, something heavier. The group chat hadn't created this plan. It had refined it, encouraged it, cheered it on. But the idea had been hers first. The next morning, I called my sister, Rachel. I hadn't planned to. The words just came out. I think my marriage is over, I said. There was silence, then a slow exhale. Are you safe? That question cracked something open in me. Yes, I said, but I'm done being used. Rachel had always seen Melissa more clearly than I had. Not with suspicion, just with distance. Love shouldn't require you to disappear, she said gently. Later that day, I began separating what little was left. Accounts, documents, boundaries. Each action felt like reclaiming oxygen. When Melissa came home, she noticed the change immediately. You're quiet, she said. I'm listening, I replied. She frowned, unsettled by that. For the first time, she didn't know where she stood. And that, I realized, was the first real shift in power. Because while she'd been planning an exit, I had finally stopped standing still. The change didn't go unnoticed. Melissa sensed it in the way I moved through the apartment, quieter, more deliberate, no longer orbiting her moods. She asked fewer questions, watched me more. People who are used to control feel its absence like a draft. 2 days later, she tried to reassert it. Daniel, she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed lightly, casual but calculated. I've been thinking. Maybe we should take a break. Just some space. No drama. A break. The word was delivered gently, like a favor. I didn't answer right away. I was rinsing a mug, watching the water swirl down the drain. Funny how endings often arrive disguised as compromises. What does a break look like to you? I asked. She shrugged. I could stay with a friend for a while. Focus on resetting. Figure out what I really want. There it was. Not we. I turned off the tap and faced her. And the salon. Her eyes flickered. I told you, I'm handling that. I nodded. You've been handling a lot on your own. For a moment, something like irritation crossed her face. Then she softened it into concern. You sound resentful. No, I said calmly. I sound informed. The word landed harder than I expected. She straightened slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, choosing each word carefully, that I'm not selling anything else. No more assets. No more favors dressed up as emergencies. Silence stretched between us. Melissa laughed lightly. You're being dramatic. That laugh used to disarm me. Tonight, it sounded hollow. A flashback surfaced years earlier, when my mother warned me after my first serious breakup, pay attention to how someone reacts when they don't get what they expect. I'd nodded then without understanding. Now, I watched understanding play out in real time. Melissa picked up her phone. I need air, she said. This conversation isn't productive. She walked out. I didn't follow. Instead, I opened the drawer where I'd started keeping documents quietly, methodically. Copies of emails, bank statements, the spreadsheet. Proof not for revenge, but for grounding. For truth. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She didn't tell you everything. I stared at the screen. Heart THUDDING. Who is this? I typed. A pause. Someone who used to believe her too. Before I could respond, another message came through. Check the salon's second account. Second account. The words echoed like a door creaking open somewhere I hadn't known existed. It made sense, too much sense. The unexplained cash. The envelope at the cafe. The confidence beneath her fear. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because the pieces were no longer scattered. They were aligning into a shape I couldn't ignore, a shape that suggested the betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Calculated. And shared. I set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the story I thought was ending was actually approaching its most dangerous chapter. Because once money joins betrayal, love is no longer the only casualty. I didn't go to the salon the next day. That would have been too obvious, too emotional. Instead, I did something quieter, something that felt almost unnatural after years of reacting instead of planning. I waited. At work, I barely touched my tasks, my attention split between spreadsheets on my screen and the new pattern forming in my head. The message from the unknown number replayed over and over. Someone who used to believe her too. Whoever it was, they'd sounded less vengeful than exhausted. Burned, not bitter. That evening, Melissa came home unusually upbeat. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and smiled like someone who'd just solved a problem. Good news, she said. I think things are finally turning around. I looked up slowly. The salon? She nodded. I might have found a way out of all this stress. Double quotes out. Not through. Out. What kind of way? I asked. She waved it off. I'll explain later. When it's official. Another delay. Another carefully timed promise. I said nothing, just watched her move around the kitchen, humming again. That hum had become a tell, appearing whenever she felt ahead of me. That night, after she fell asleep, I quietly opened my laptop and logged into the bank. The main account showed exactly what I expected. Drained, limping, barely breathing. Then I searched deeper, using the salon's business registration number, following trails I'd once trusted her to manage. It took less than 20 minutes. There it was, a second account, opened under the salon's name but linked to a separate email, one I didn't recognize. The balance made my stomach drop. It wasn't millions. It didn't need to be. It was enough to start over. Enough to explain the new clothes, the envelopes, the confidence beneath the fear. Transfers jumped out at me. Small amounts moved regularly, disguised as operational adjustments. Clever, legal looking, easy to miss if you weren't searching for intent. A flashback slammed into me. Melissa insisting she handled digital banking because it's just easier this way. Me agreeing. Relieved to offload responsibility. Trust, I realized, wasn't blind. It had been trained. My phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. You found it, didn't you? I stared at the screen before replying. Yes. A moment passed. She did the same thing with me. The message came. Different business, same playbook. By the time I realized, she'd already reframed the story. I was the unstable one. The obstacle. My chest tightened. Why tell me now? I typed. Because I didn't speak up when I should have. And because I saw her name pop up in that group chat again. That group chat. The one that hadn't just encouraged her escape but normalized it. I closed the laptop slowly. Across the room, Melissa slept peacefully, her phone charging beside her, face down. For the first time since this began, anger surfaced, not wild, not explosive, but focused, directional. This wasn't just about a marriage unraveling. It was about a pattern, and patterns don't stop unless someone interrupts them. I lay back and stared into the dark, knowing the next step would require restraint, timing, proof. Because if Melissa planned to leave clean, she had underestimated how quietly I could stay. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because my mind was racing but because it had gone unnervingly calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally understand the shape of the storm and stop pretending it's just bad weather. In the morning, Melissa moved through the apartment with a lightness I hadn't seen in months. She packed a small overnight bag, humming again, her back to me as she zipped it shut. I'm staying with Jenna tonight, she said casually. Just to clear my head. Jenna, one of the names I'd seen in the group chat, one of the women at the cafe. I nodded. Do what you need to do. She paused, turning to study my face. You're okay with this? For now, I said. That answer unsettled her. I saw it in the slight tightening of her jaw, the way her eyes lingered a second too long. She'd expected resistance, questions, guilt. Instead, she got space. She kissed my cheek, picked up her bag, and left without looking back. The apartment felt different, immediately lighter, quieter. I opened the windows and let the air move through the rooms, as if clearing out something that had been stale for a long time. Then I got to work, I didn't rush. Rushing was how mistakes happened. I gathered everything slowly: bank statements, lease documents, email chains, screenshots. I labeled folders. I made backups. I sent copies to my sister, not with explanations, just with a simple message. Hold on to these for me. As I worked, memories kept surfacing, recontextualizing themselves. Melissa pushing for the salon to be solely in her name. Melissa discouraging joint decisions. Melissa framing independence as empowerment, while quietly isolating me from information. None of it felt accidental anymore. By late afternoon, my phone rang. Melissa. I let it ring once longer than necessary before answering. Hey. Her voice was bright, almost rehearsed. I've been thinking. Maybe we should talk tonight. About us, she said. I don't want things to get messy. Messy. The word landed with weight. She wasn't worried about my feelings, she was worried about friction. We can talk, I said evenly. When you're ready. Another pause. Longer this time. Daniel, she said carefully, whatever happens, I hope we can be adults about it. I almost laughed. After the call ended, I sat back and stared at the wall, understanding something crucial. Melissa wasn't afraid of losing me, she was afraid of losing control of the narrative. That evening, the unknown number messaged again. She tried to make it clean. It read, she always does. If you let her. I typed back slowly, I won't. The reply came quickly. Then don't confront her yet. Let her speak first. People reveal more when they think they're ahead. That advice echoed something my mother used to say after my father left. Listen carefully to how people explain themselves. That's where the truth leaks out. As night fell, I poured myself a drink and sat by the window, watching the city lights blink on one by one. Somewhere across town, Melissa was likely rehearsing, practicing lines that painted her as reasonable, constrained, misunderstood. She didn't know yet that the exit she'd been planning so carefully was about to narrow. Not because I wanted revenge, but because for the first time in a long while, I wasn't willing to disappear quietly from my own life. The cafe Melissa chose for our talk was bright, open, and intentionally neutral, the kind of place people picked when they wanted witnesses without calling them that. Sunlight spilled through wide glass windows, softening everything, making hard conversations feel less dangerous than they really were. She was already seated when I arrived, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. Her posture was composed, almost professional. This wasn't a wife meeting her husband. This was someone negotiating an outcome. Daniel, she said, standing briefly, offering a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. You look calm. I am, I replied, taking the seat across from her. That word again. Calm. She studied me the way people do when something doesn't behave as expected. She began carefully. I've been under a lot of pressure. The salon, the expectations, trying to be someone I'm not sure I ever really wanted to be. I listened, saying nothing. I feel like I lost myself, she continued. And somewhere along the way, we lost each other too. Her phrasing was precise. No blame, no admission, just drift, like things simply happened on their own. A memory surfaced uninvited. Melissa years ago, barefoot in our old apartment, laughing as she cut my hair in the kitchen, telling me one day she'd own a salon that felt like home to women who were tired of pretending. That dream had been real. So had the woman who dreamed it. But something had changed, slowly, quietly. I think, she said gently, we'd both be happier if we separated. Cleanly, no fights, no lawyers dragging things out. There it was. I nodded once. And the salon. Her eyes flickered. Just a fraction. Enough. What about it? She asked. I sold my car and my jewelry to keep it afloat, I said. I just want to understand where that leaves me, she sighed, as if tired by the inconvenience of the question. Daniel, that was your choice. You wanted to help. That sentence carried years of strategy inside it, framing sacrifice as unilateral, love as optional, responsibility as personal, not shared. I did, I agreed, because I thought we were building something together. She leaned forward now, lowering her voice. We were, until it stopped working. I met her gaze, steady. When did it stop working for you? She hesitated. Not long, but long enough. I don't think timelines matter, she said. What matters is moving forward without hurting each other. Outside, a couple laughed as they passed the window. Life, uninterrupted. I reached into my jacket and placed my phone on the table. Face down, not a threat, just a presence. I agree, I said, about not hurting each other. That's why honesty matters. Her eyes dropped to the phone, then lifted back to me, searching. What do you mean? I mean, I said calmly, Before we talk about clean exits, I need to understand everything. No gaps. No revisions later. She sat back slowly, reassessing. This wasn't the conversation she'd prepared for. Is there something you want to ask me? She said. Yes, I replied. But not yet. The silence stretched between us, thick and telling. For the first time, I saw uncertainty creep into her composure. And I realized something else. This wasn't the end. She'd planned. It was the beginning of the part she hadn't. The apartment was quiet when Melissa returned that night. The kind of quiet that made every sound too loud. The door clicked shut behind her. And for a moment she just stood there, keys still in her hand. As if she could feel the air had shifted. I was seated at the dining table. The same table where we once planned vacations we never took. Budgets we never followed. Futures we assumed would wait for us. A single lamp was on. Nothing dramatic. Nothing hidden. You didn't text, she said carefully. I didn't need to, I replied. She set her bag down slowly. Her eyes moved not to me first, but to the table. To the neat stack of documents. To my phone placed deliberately beside them. Screen up this time. You look like you've made a decision, she said. I made it a while ago, I answered. I just needed proof to catch up. Her breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. She sat across from me, crossing her arms, defaulting to defense. Daniel, she began, whatever you think you know. I know you planned to leave before the salon failed, I said calmly. I know the group chat wasn't about venting. It was about timing. About how to walk away clean while I carried the weight. Her eyes dropped. Not in shame but in calculation. A reflex honed over time. That's not fair, she said softly. It doesn't have to be fair, I replied. It just has to be true. I slid one document forward. Then another. Bank transfers. Messages. Dates lining up too cleanly to argue with. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The facts did the heavy lifting. A flash of the past moved through me. Melissa crying the night I sold the car, swearing she'd make it up to me. The way she hugged me too tightly, like someone holding onto a raft they already planned to let go of. I was scared, she said finally. I didn't want to fail twice. Not the business. Not the marriage. So you let me fail for you, I said. Silence settled between us, final and irreversible. I'm not here to punish you, I continued. I'm here to end this honestly. The salon stays yours. I'm not fighting for it. But you'll repay what I put in slowly, legally, transparently. She looked up sharply. You're not taking it. No, I said. I already paid enough. That was when something broke, not in me, but in her. The composure slipped. Tears came, unplanned, inconvenient. I didn't think you'd be this steady, she whispered. I wasn't, I said. I learned. I stood, gathering the papers. I'll move out tomorrow. The lawyer will contact you. This is the clean ending you wanted, just not the version where I disappear quietly. She watched me walk away, finally understanding the cost of what she'd taken for granted. Later that night, alone in the bedroom, I felt the grief arrive, not sharp, but heavy. Yet beneath it was something else. Space. Breath. The beginning of a life no longer built on sacrifice mistaken for love. I had sold my car. I had sold my jewelry. But I had bought back my dignity. And this time, I wasn't giving it away.